I found out why my dad never talked about his experience in the Vietnam War. Part 1. For the past year, I've been the primary caretaker for my father, Tan, who is in the final stages of colon cancer. The responsibility has been incredibly taxing, both emotionally and physically, on me and my family. Watching someone you love slowly fade away is a heart-wrenching experience that words can hardly describe. Every day brings a new challenge, a fresh reminder of the inevitable. Yet, in this twilight of his life, I found a strange comfort in our one-on-one conversations, these rare moments of tranquility amidst the storm. Dad grew up in a small village in central Vietnam, and his stories often whisk me away to those simpler times. He speaks of his childhood with a sparkle in his eyes, narrating tales of mischievous adventures and youthful dreams. I hear about his journey to America, a leap into the unknown, fueled by hope and resilience. These stories, light-hearted and warm, have been my solace, a gentle reminder of the man he once was. As I prepared his chemo, meticulously adjusting the doses and equipment, Dad's gaze fixed on me with a seriousness that halted my movements. "Spencer," he said in a voice barely above a whisper, "I have to tell you something." His eyes, usually filled with warmth, held a flicker of something unrecognizable. Was it fear? Or perhaps regret? As I adjusted the pillows behind him, making him as comfortable as I could, I took his weathered hand in mine. The room was quiet, save for the gentle hum of the machines keeping him company. My heart pounded with a mix of apprehension and eagerness. "Bah, whatever it is, I'm here," I said softly, encouraging him to share his hidden tale. "There's something I've never told anyone, not even your mother," he began, his voice steady but distant. "It's about what I witnessed during the war." I sat there, stunned. My father had always been a closed book when it came to his time as a South Vietnamese soldier during the Vietnam War. Whenever my siblings and I had dared to broach the subject, he would shut us down immediately, sometimes with a stern look, other times with a sharp word. "Are you sure, Ba?" I asked hesitantly. He nodded slowly, his gaze fixed on a point beyond the walls of the room. "Yes, it's time you knew." He took a deep breath, as if gathering the strength to delve into memories long buried. The following story is a direct translation from Vietnamese to English of my dad's account of his experience with his permission. April 17, 1968. As I carefully position the Claymore mine, the jungle around me feels both suffocating and oddly comforting. I've become a shadow in these dense woods, with skills honed from too many battles fought and too many lives lost. The infamous Ho Chi Minh Trail, a serpent that weaves through the terrain, carrying the lifeblood of our enemy. Our position is strategically chosen. We're entrenched on a hilltop, offering a commanding view of the trail below. It's a defensible spot, with natural barriers on three sides. Our mission is simple: eliminate any commie bastards daring to tread this path. The rest of my platoon of rangers, dispersed in strategic cover, are setting traps of their own. The air is thick with anticipation and the heavy scent of wet earth. The jungle, dense and unforgiving, seems to absorb our every breath, every heartbeat. We're not just soldiers, we're brothers in arms, each carrying a burden of loss and vengeance that weighs heavily on our souls. The Viet Cong, faceless enemies in the shadows, had taken more than territory. They had stolen pieces of our lives, leaving gaping wounds that would never heal. In the hushed whispers around the campfire, we don't just share rations, we share stories of our loved ones. Lieutenant Tone talks about his little brother, a bright-eyed boy who wanted to be a teacher, now lying in an unmarked grave. Private C's voice breaks as he recounts the night the North Vietnamese soldiers stormed his village, his mother's cry haunting his dreams. As I finish setting the mine, my fingers, calloused and scarred, instinctively reach into the pocket of my uniform. I pull out a photo, worn from too many days tucked close to my heart. It's a family photo, one of the few keepsakes I have from a life that now seems a world away. My eyes linger on one face in particular, Hayep, my older brother. Hayep, the person who taught me how to ride a bike on the uneven dirt roads of Tuy Loan. Hayep, the person who used his own body to shield mine, when our drunken father came home in a fury, his fists itching for something to hit. Hayep, the village official with dreams of peace, whom the Viet Cong executed during the Tet offensive, leaving his body in a ditch, along with their other victims, as if his life meant nothing. I can still see my sister-in-law, once vibrant and full of laughter, wearing the veil of a widow, her children's eyes reflecting a future stolen. Every patrol, every ambush we set, is not just a military strategy, it's a personal vendetta. In the quiet moments, when the jungle whispers its ancient secrets, I find myself talking to my brother, promising him justice, promising that his death will not be in vain. As I glance to my side, I see my friend, Specialist Vin, his fingers deftly moving over the beads of his rosary. "Hey, Vin," I whisper, nudging him gently, "make sure you say a prayer for me too." I give him a half-hearted smile. I'm a Buddhist, but in times like these, I'll take all the protection I can get. Vin looks up with a small, knowing smile. "Don't worry, brother. God watches over all of us." Sergeant Nia, a stern figure whose presence commands respect, moves silently among us, his steps barely disturbing the forest floor. The lines on his face tell stories of countless battles, each crease a testament to his resilience. He pauses beside me, his eyes scanning the perimeter with a practiced gaze. "Corporal Tan, He addresses me, using my given name which few dare to utter. Everything secure on your end? I nod, meeting his intense gaze. Yes, Sergeant. The claymores are set, and the men are in position. He places a firm hand on my shoulder, a rare gesture of camaraderie. Good. Remember, it's not just about holding the line, it's about protecting each other. We're all we have out here. His words, though simple, resonate deeply. I nod in agreement. As he moves on, I find a secluded spot near a towering tree, its roots offering a makeshift seat. The night is slowly descending, wrapping the jungle in a cloak of darkness. The chirps and calls of nocturnal creatures become the soundtrack of our vigil. April 18, 1968. Time seems to stretch and compress in these waiting hours. Every shadow becomes a potential threat, every rustle a possible enemy. Late into the night, as the moon casts its silver glow over the jungle canopy, the air grows tense with the anticipation of confrontation. The nocturnal sounds of the forest, once a comforting background chorus, now serve as a mask for the stealthy approach of our adversaries. We lie in wait, each man a coiled spring, ready to unleash hell at a moment's notice. In the dense underbrush, I hear the faintest sound of footsteps, muffled but unmistakable. The enemy is near, their hushed whispers barely audible over the heartbeat thumping in my ears. My grip tightens around the detonator wired to the claymores. The Viet Cong, unaware of their impending doom, continue their advance, inching closer to our trap. The tension is palpable, a physical weight in the air. I wait, my senses heightened, for the perfect moment to strike. And then, when they are almost upon us, close enough for me to smell what they had for dinner on their breaths, I press the detonator. The explosion is deafening, a fiery eruption that tears through the night. The claymore unleashes its deadly force, obliterating a group of Viet Cong unfortunate enough to be directly in its path. Shrapnel flies through the air, marking the beginning of our ambush. A spray of blood and viscera from the explosion showers down upon us, a sensory overload that's both nauseating and invigorating. I shoulder my M16, its familiar weight, a cold comfort in my hands, and fire into the shadows. Every burst of gunfire is a desperate attempt to fend off the encroaching horror, to protect the men beside me. The muzzle flash of our weapons cuts through the darkness, revealing glimpses of the enemy, shadows darting between trees, faces contorted in fear and rage. The Viet Cong, caught off guard by the ferocity of our assault, scramble to find cover. Their return fire is sporadic, disorganized, the panic evident in their ranks. We press our advantage, relentless and unforgiving. I keep firing, the recoil of my rifle jarring against my shoulder. Amidst the cacophony, the shouts of my comrades blend with the cries of the wounded and dying. Sergeant Nia's voice cuts through the din, a steady command urging us to hold our ground, to keep the pressure. And we do, with a ferocity that borders on the primal. The enemy, realizing the futility of their position, begins to retreat. Their retreat is not orderly, it's a desperate scramble for survival, indicative of the chaos we've inflicted upon them. We do not let up, pursuing them with our gunfire, forcing them deeper into the dark embrace of the jungle. It quickly turns into a rout. Or so we think. As the last of the gunfire dies down, a heavy silence descends upon the forest. The aftermath is a grim sight, the ground littered with bodies of both friends and foes, but mostly foes. The smell of death permeates the air. In the eerie calm that follows our ambush, we quickly begin tending to the wounded, our hands slick with blood and soil. My heart races, adrenaline and fear mingling in my veins. I can sense it in the air, the sharp, electric tang of impending doom. It's an almost palpable shift in the atmosphere, like a noose tightening around our collective necks. Lieutenant Tone, sensing it too, barks out an order to our radio operator, Private First Class Huang. His voice, laced with urgency, cuts through the bedlam. Call in air support, now. Huang's voice is calm but urgent, his fingers gripping the radio handset like a lifeline. Tango 3 to Falcon Base. Heavy enemy engagement. Requesting immediate close air support at Grid Bravo Char. As Huang relays the coordinates, his voice suddenly cuts off. A sniper's bullet pierces through his helmet with a sickening thud. He slumps forward, his lifeless body still clutching the radio. Tone snatches the radio handset, his voice a mix of determination and desperation. Falcon Base, this is Tango 3. Coordinates Bravo Charlie 59er. We need immediate air support, over. The words barely leave his mouth when another bullet strikes Tone squarely in the chest, a clean shot that sends him reeling backward. The handset falls from his grip as he collapses. There's a crackling response from the radio, the voice on the other end distant but clear. Tango 3, Falcon Base copies. Air support is en route. Hang tight, over. Suddenly, without warning, more bullets whistle through the trees, an invisible death raining from all sides. In the midst of the chaos, Sergeant Nia swiftly assumes command. Corporal Tan, fire a flare. He shouts. Without hesitation, I reach for the flare gun. I aim skyward, and with a deep breath, pull the trigger. The flare bursts into the night sky, a beacon of bright red against the dark canopy, casting an eerie glow over the battlefield. The sudden illumination reveals a sight that causes my heart to sink. Before us, stretching across the forest floor, is what appears to be an entire battalion of Viet Cong soldiers. Their numbers are overwhelming, like a dark tide threatening to engulf us. A shrill whistle pierces through air, a harbinger of further violence. It's quickly followed by a flood of Viet Cong charging out of the jungle, their weapons firing wildly. Their faces are a blur of hatred, illuminated sporadically by the flashes of their guns. In an instant, our position transforms into a maelstrom of bullets and screams. We return fire, but it's a desperate, uneven battle. Hold your ground. Nia barks. The gunfire intensifies as the Viet Cong try to overrun our position before air support arrives. We fight back with everything we have, but the fear is palpable. Every soldier knows that the next bullet could be theirs. The enemy crashes into our lines with a ferocity that turns the battle into a savage melee. Bayonets flash in the dim light, slicing through the air with deadly precision. Rifle butts smash against bone and flesh. Fists, hardened by desperation, strike with a raw, primal force. In the midst of this chaos, a Viet Cong soldier lunges at me, his bayonet gleaming in the moonlight, attached menacingly to the barrel of his AK-47. The feeling of imminent death grips me, but instinct takes over. In a swift motion, I sidestep his charge, feeling the rush of air as the bayonet slices past me. I grab his arm, using his own momentum against him, and twist it violently. The AK clatters to the ground. We are now locked in a desperate struggle, our faces just centimeters apart. The soldier, quick and agile, doesn't falter. With a sudden jerk, he breaks free of my grasp and in a fluid motion, sweeps my rifle away, leaving me disarmed too. His eyes lock onto mine. I can see the raw desire to survive in his eyes. We both know it's either him or me. With a surge of strength, I push him back. He stumbles, but quickly regains his balance, his eyes never leaving mine. We circle each other warily, each waiting for an opening. The sounds of battle around us fade into the background, this moment becoming a world unto itself. Suddenly, he lunges again, his fists aimed at my face. I deflect his blows, feeling the impact resonate up my arms. I counter with a punch of my own, catching him off guard. He reels back, but I don't let up. I grab a discarded rifle from the ground and swing with all my might. The rifle butt connects with his head with a sickening thud, sending him sprawling to the ground. He's dazed, but not defeated. Without hesitation, I raise my rifle, aiming it squarely at his chest. The weight of the decision presses on me, but survival leaves no room for doubt. I squeeze the trigger. The sound of the shot echoes in my ears. His body jerks with the impact, then lies still. I don't linger on the act, there's no time for remorse or reflection in the heat of battle. In the midst of this frenzy, I catch sight of Sergeant Nia. He's moving with a limp, his usual steady gait now faltering. Blood seeps through the dark green fabric of his fatigues. Despite his injury, he continues to fire, his resolve unbroken. I rush to his side. "Sergeant, you're hit." I shout over the din of battle. "Medic! I need a medic here." Nia grabs my arm. His grip is strong, belying the pain he must be enduring. "Listen, Tan," he says with urgency, "we need to retreat. Regroup and live to fight another day." "But Sergeant," I protest. He interrupts me with a fierce intensity. "Do it, Corporal. That's an order. Save the men." Reluctantly, I signal to the remaining soldiers, shouting orders for a fighting retreat. We start to fall back, moving with urgency but maintaining cover. The enemy, sensing our retreat, presses their attack, emboldened. Sergeant Nia, despite his injury, maneuvers towards the M60 machine gun, a hulking presence. With deliberate, almost methodical movements, he mounts the gun, steadying it against his shoulder. He lays down a withering barrage of cover fire, the machine gun roaring to life in his hands. Each burst from the M60 is like a thunderclap, reverberating through the jungle. As we fall back, retreating into the dense undergrowth, I can't help but glance over my shoulder. I see Sergeant Nia lying next to his spent weapon. I see him with a grenade, clutched tightly in his hand in a final act of bravery and self-sacrifice. His eyes meet mine one last time, conveying a silent message of farewell and a command to keep going. "Nia, no." I scream, but it's too late. He pulls the pin and hurls himself towards a group of advancing enemy soldiers. The explosion that follows is deafening, a fiery blast that lights up the night. As we retreat, the air suddenly trembles with the ominous whistle of incoming mortars. The forest erupts into a symphony of explosions, each blast shaking the earth beneath my feet. Dirt and debris rain down as trees splinter and fall, their mighty forms reduced to mere obstacles in our path. In the mayhem, a mortar shell lands perilously close. The impact of the shell sends me flying, my body slamming into the earth with brutal force. For a moment, I'm dazed, my ears ringing, vision blurred. My cumbersome flak jacket takes the brunt of the blast. I feel a sharp pain in my chest, a searing heat that spreads rapidly. Instinctively, I reach for the source of the pain and find a jagged piece of shrapnel embedded in the jacket. It's mere millimeters from my heart. Crawling on all fours, I desperately search for any sign of my platoon. But the smoky haze renders everything indistinct, shapes and shadows merging into an unrecognizable blur. The realization hits hard, I am separated from my unit, alone in this hellscape. I crawl into a shallow ditch, my body scraping against the rough terrain. The ditch, barely deep enough to provide cover, becomes my temporary refuge. My heart pounds frantically in my chest. The air is thick with smoke and the smell of burning foliage. Through the haze, I catch glimpses of enemy soldiers sweeping the area, their voices a menacing murmur in the dense jungle. I press myself lower, my face against the damp earth, trying to make myself as small as possible. The mud and leaves cling to my uniform, blending me into the landscape. The fear of capture, of falling into enemy hands, is overwhelming. Memories of stories told by fellow soldiers about the brutality of the VC surge through my mind. I hold my breath as a group of soldiers passes by the ditch. Their boots come perilously close, mud and leaves falling from their soles. I can hear their heavy breathing, the rustle of their uniforms, the clinking of their weapons. One of them pauses, and for a moment, I fear he has spotted me. But then, a distant sound catches his attention. The faint but unmistakable roar of jet engines crescendos through the jungle, pulling my pursuer's gaze skyward. The soldiers around my hiding spot suddenly become agitated, their focus shifting from the ground search to the skies above. The sound grows louder, more distinct, a herald of impending doom. I risk a glance upwards and see a squadron of A-4 Skyhawks streaking across the sky, their sleek forms cutting through the clouds. They move with a precision that speaks of deadly intent, a force of nature unto themselves. Only the Americans fly A-4s. The VC soldiers, now fully aware of the impending danger, scatter in a frenzied attempt to evade the aerial assault. The jungle canopy shudders under the thunderous roar of the Skyhawks. Suspended for a fleeting moment, the world seems to hold its breath. Then, with a precision born of countless sorties, the aircraft release their payload. The objects, canister-like in shape, descend with a grim inevitability, their trajectory marking a path towards the heart of the enemy's position. As the canisters impact, an inferno erupts, not the familiar, searing orange of napalm, but an otherworldly glow that paints the pre-dawn in hues of eerie green and purple. The flames, unnaturally vibrant, consume the foliage with a voracious appetite, leaving behind a surreal landscape bathed in ghostly light. I know I must move, I must put distance between myself and this alien inferno, or risk being consumed by it. The heat is intense, a wave of searing air that presses against my skin, urging me to flee. Crawling out of the ditch, I stagger to my feet, disoriented and dazed. My lungs ache from the acrid smoke, my eyes water from the intense light of the flames. I stumble forward. The ground underfoot is uneven, treacherous with fallen branches and debris. I'm driven by a primal instinct to survive, to escape this hellish scene. The fire seems to chase me, its fingers of flame licking at my heels. As the first light of dawn begins to filter through the smoke-filled sky, I keep moving, my legs pushing forward on sheer instinct. Emerging into a clearing, I pause for a moment to catch my breath. I scan the surroundings, searching for any sign of my comrades, any indication of where to head next. The eerie silence is unsettling. My throat is parched from the smoke and exertion. Reaching for my canteen, I unscrew the cap with trembling hands. Just as I raise it to my lips, a sudden, sharp crack splits the air. Instinctively, I duck, but not before feeling the shock of impact against the canteen. Water splashes across my face as the canteen is violently jerked from my grasp. A sniper's bullet, aimed with deadly precision, barely missed my throat. The sharp report of the sniper's rifle echoed through the clearing. Pinned down, I crouch low, my heart racing, adrenaline surging through my veins. Every instinct screams to move, but I know the slightest motion could spell my end. The underbrush is dense, a tapestry of shadows that could conceal an army. My breathing is shallow, each exhale a calculated risk. The sniper is patient, a tiger waiting for his prey to make a fatal mistake. Minutes stretch into an eternity. The sniper's silence is as terrifying as his bullets. Staying here is a death sentence. I need to locate him, turn the tables. I remember my training in counter-sniping. Find the sniper's likely position, use the environment to your advantage, and move unpredictably. The shot came from the north, judging by the sun's position and the bullet's trajectory. He must be nestled high, with a clear view of the clearing. I focus on the trees, looking for any irregularities, any hint of human presence. Then, I see it, a slight glint, a reflection of sunlight off a scope. It's subtle, but to a trained eye, it's as glaring as a beacon. My pulse quickens, I've located the son of a gun. With the sniper's position pinpointed, I start to formulate a plan to outmaneuver him. I need to close the distance without being detected. I grab a sizable rock from the ground, its rough surface biting into my palm. With a swift, practiced motion, I hurl it towards the east side of the clearing, opposite my position. The sniper, predictably, shifts his fire towards the sound. It's a momentary distraction, but it's all I need. I seize the opportunity, bolting towards the dense thicket on my left. Each step is deliberate, calculated to avoid snapping twigs or rustling leaves. The sun is now high, casting deep shadows that I use to mask my movements. I keep my eyes fixed on the spot where I saw the glint, using it as a guide. As I inch closer, the details of the sniper's perch become clearer. He's nestled in a crook of a large tree, his position commanding a clear view of the clearing. I continue my approach, moving in a wide arc to flank his position. The ground here is littered with fresh fallen leaves, a natural carpet that muffles my footsteps. I'm close now, close enough to hear the faint creak of him reloading his rifle, scanning the clearing for any sign of movement. The sniper is a slight figure, his body language tense and focused. He's armed with an SKS rifle. A conical straw hat conceals his face, blending him into the natural surroundings. My hand tightens around the grip of my M16. I raise it slowly, lining up the sights with where I expect his head to be. My breathing steadies, my finger gently pulling on the trigger. My rifle jams. The unmistakable click of the failed mechanism echoes mockingly in the quiet jungle. Panic surges within me, a cold wave threatening to wash away my resolve. The VC sniper, alerted to my presence, whirls around to face me. To my shock, it's not the hardened warrior I expected, but a young woman. Her black hair matted with sweat, is tied back in simple pigtails that give her a deceptively innocent appearance. Her face, streaked with dirt and an expression of deadly determination. For a moment, we lock eyes, each of us taken aback by the other's appearance. Her dark brown eyes, wide with surprise, quickly harden into a steely resolve. Taking advantage of my hesitation, she discards her empty rifle and lunges at me with a machete, the blade glinting menacingly in the sunlight. Die, imperialist dog. She spits. I react instinctively, sidestepping her initial strike, but the momentum of her attack brings us crashing together. Our struggle is fierce, a tangle of limbs and weapons. The machete slices through the air, narrowly missing my face. Our bodies collide with a force that knocks the breath from my lungs. I grasp at her wrists, trying to wrestle the machete away. But her grip is unyielding. The edge of the blade presses against my neck, a cold, sharp threat that sends a shiver down my spine. I muster all my strength and manage to twist her arm, forcing the machete away from my neck. With a sudden surge of energy, I push her off balance. She stumbles backward, and I seize the opportunity, tackling her to the ground. I try to pin her down, covering her mouth with my hand in a desperate attempt to prevent her from making any noise that might alert her comrades. But she's relentless, her survival instincts as sharp as her blade. She sinks her teeth into my fingers, the pain searing and immediate. I wince, feeling the warmth of my own blood trickle down my skin. Her teeth sink deeper, and the sharp pain forces me to release her. She scrambles to her feet. The machete is still clutched tightly in her hand, its blade smeared with my blood. My arm throbs with pain, blood soaking through the sleeve of my fatigues. The sounds of approaching footsteps break through the chaos of our struggle. I can't tell if it's friend or foe. As the VC sniper raises her machete for another deadly strike, her eyes suddenly widen in abject horror, fixated on something directly behind me. The bloodlust in her eyes gives way to unmistakable terror, halting her mid-swing. She stands frozen, her body tensed as if ready to flee. "Oh, my God!" she manages to utter, her face pale. "Comrade Fawn?" I dare not turn to look, fearing any movement might reignite her attack. But the expression on her face tells me all I need to know. Something behind me poses a greater threat than our desperate struggle. I slowly pivot, keeping one wary eye on the sniper as I turn to face the new threat. Standing mere meters away is a figure so grotesque, so otherworldly, that my mind struggles to comprehend it. It's humanoid, but its skin is blistered and peeling, like the flesh of someone who has been consumed by fire and somehow survived. The remnants of a North Vietnamese uniform cling to its twisted form, the fabric melding into the charred skin. Another figure emerges from the jungle, equally monstrous. Its face is a nightmarish mask, swollen and deformed, with eyes that no longer resemble anything human. I notice the gold crucifix hanging from its neck. It belonged to my friend, Vin, now reduced to this unholy mockery of a man. One by one, more of these gruesome beings step into the clearing. Their movements are jerky, unnatural, as if their bodies are rebelling against the very act of motion. The air fills with a stench so foul, it clings to the back of my throat, a mix of decay and burnt flesh. The beings close in, their movements unnerving in their disjointed nature. Their mouths snap open and closed with a deformed eagerness. Foam gathers at the corners of their lips, dripping down in sickening trails. The sound of their teeth snapping together is a macabre rhythm, echoing ominously in the clearing. As the figures surround us, the sniper and I are inexorably pushed back to back, our previous struggle forgotten in the face of this unimaginable horror.